So one of my favorite things as a pastor, but also as a human being, is finding those ordinary things in our everyday life, our going and coming, commuting from work to school, the music on the radio, the things that we read, these ordinary parts of our life that surprisingly point to a deeper or perhaps extraordinary reality. And I find that through this series, as we're looking at simple things like points of renewal that we need in the human condition, and ways that God's creation kind of points to these things, it's been kind of the reality that's been under our nose the whole time. And I'm thankful alongside you that I get to be reminded of that. So today, as we think about these live oak trees, which literally you see as we look out of the window or the door of this sanctuary, there are ways that these reminders of God's provision and goodness, a goodness that we can trust, are all around. Think about right here at LSU, some of you who have been on campus here for decades, either teaching or working in some way. I didn't know this, but I found out this week that we have 1,300 live oak trees over the course of our campus as it connects to Burden Gardens. It's this urban forest that we've created that, because of the way that the live oak trees are built with their deep roots that are so enmeshed and interconnected, it is like there are these towering signs of history moved from past to present that will not be altered or shifted or blown over. Many of the trees that you see are about 100 years old, planted in the 1920s, but there are some, like the one that is purported to be the oldest tree out of them all. It's over, I think, by Hodges and the Mass Communications Building. It was planted about 200 years ago, before anything that you see constructed here was even in existence. And so there's a sense where, even where we live, we are reminded of who God is and who we are, interconnected into this vast web of growth and stability and new life. Think about New Orleans. I was just there this weekend for a minute with some friends for a show. And if you go out to City Park, many of you have, for the lights or for going to the Children's Museum or just to be able to enjoy all the different things that it has to offer. It has the most stunning collection of live oak trees, some like the Annisman and McDonough oaks, which are between 750 and 900 years old. Just breathtaking. Or I think about one of the oaks in Lake Charles, the Salier oak, the one that's just known by a lot of people on the coast as the big tree, right? But they may not know that it's 375 years old over by the Imperial Calcasieu Museum, and it has witnessed centuries of history, from the frontier days to the present. One of the interesting things about this tree is it has harbor chains that were used to reconnect two parts of the tree that were almost pulled apart because of some of the strongest hurricane storms early in the 19th century. And the tree now, many years later, is healing itself. It has become much more stable and strong, and in fact, it's even overgrowing in its strength the chains that once it was clinging on to for dear life. It's overgrowing it, creating these points of stability and hardness and strength that it didn't have even before it was first on its own. There's something where the sign of being made strong, especially in the broken places, I think has something to tell us or remind us about something that perhaps we've lived and already know. But it's a beautiful way of thinking about how our life together continues to deepen and grow, and this reality of the Spirit that we share in, and that Lent invites us to look harder once again. It's a certainly apt metaphor. All these are just everyday life reminders, things that we see in many days of our lives of what is true in our own spiritual journey. As the oak provides a steady refuge through all of life's seasons, all the generations that they encounter and allow these people to inhabit their shade, so too does our faith in God's continual care and the renewal of trust that comes from leaning into that divine shelter that is loving, healing, and sure if we allow it to be. I mentioned last week as MR was preaching that over the course of these weeks we'd be hearing from modern day thinkers on spiritual things, and those that have been speaking even from the very beginning of Christianity in the first few centuries. And this week I stumbled across some words from a medieval female mystic, Hildegard of Bingen, who said a couple of things that I think just really speak into what we're meditating on today together. First, she said, when we lean into the divine embrace, our inner landscape is transformed. Doubt withers and trust flourishes like verdant vines reaching for the sun. And then she said, the soul, when nurtured by divine light, blooms as a garden in eternal spring. Each petal a testament to God's unfailing care. There are times where we can see and believe these realities. And there are certain times or chapters in our life where it may be harder to detect or even accept. I think about one story that has tended to live through at least the past few generations in many of our hearts and lives. How many of y'all have a tattered copy of a Shel Silverstein book on your shelves? A few. I see some nods here, right? A lot of you know his poetry, which is prolific. I think the boa constrictor just lives rent-free in my brain, being a parent, to be able to say it by heart. But there's another touching parable in the form of a short story called The Giving Tree that I know has meant a great deal to my life and the life of my children. Maybe it has to you as well. And just to catch everybody up, if you haven't encountered this story at all or lately, maybe you've slept since then, it's like, what was that about again? It's this. It tells the story of a tree's unwavering and unconditional love for a boy throughout his life. From a young age, the boy finds joy in the tree's shade, the tree's fruit and branches, and as he grows older, his needs evolve, as any person's do. From simple play to building a home and beyond. And in response, the tree, who again loved the boy, selflessly gives away its leaves, its branches, even eventually its trunk, so that it left behind only a humble stump as a sign of its existence. This gentle story, but profound story, illustrates the beauty and sometimes the sadness that comes from unconditional giving, and it prompts us to reflect in a way on themes of self-sacrifice, love without expectation, and deep, often challenging dynamics between relationships, the giver and the receiver, a bond that mirrors God's steadfast, sure, and nurturing care for us, even when we have little or nothing at all to offer in return. If you're like me, the quality of this story has changed over time. Having read it first as a teenager, I often thought about all of the people in my life who stood in as giving trees in a way, and was faced with the kind of sacrifice that I perhaps had taken for granted or didn't see fully for the profound nature of what it was. And then as I've gotten older, like many of you, as a parent or a grandparent, reading this story to a child, perhaps with some tears in your eyes, your child not knowing what exactly is happening with this emotional response. There's a sense where we know that this love is difficult and requires so much of us, but in the end, it is in fact worth it. And it is that kind of profound and big love that we see, that we're called to often in our most special relationships. And this phrase that the tree says, after every gift she makes, after every overture of love that she offers, the boy takes it and runs, and the refrain is the same. Now, you don't need me. And it's not said with a sourness or a sallow quality in the voice. It's said with deep and abiding, fully unexplainable joy. It's tinged with a bittersweet honesty, and it reflects the cycle of God's giving and receiving, inviting us to trust in God's perfect timing and abundant care. And in these moments where the tree was used, again, it was also the same, that she also was happy. It says every time, and the tree was happy. And it's that happiness that often we lose when we allow ourselves to perhaps question, especially in the worst of times, God's presence and God's provision in our lives. It's understandable, it is natural, and yet it cuts us off from the very love that is present and the love we know that we need. This tree's love, like a healthy parent's love, isn't measured by what it receives, but by the boundless giving that it offers, and a gift that continues even when it means a sacrifice of its own fullness. It is overflowing and a provision that meets us in our need. So in our scripture today, as Joanne read it for us, Jesus receives word. We don't know exactly how, but he receives word that Herod wants him gone and dead, eradicated from this life. And the way that Herod operates is he operates not slowly, but it's often swift. And so even with this threat that is hanging heavy over his life, it doesn't allow him to in any way turn away from or refuse to continue on his mission of loving people and helping people to understand who God is through his life, through his love, through his words, through his abiding presence. And at a time where he could very easily say, "Woe is me," and turn inward in all of his fear and frustration, because you remember that even God incarnate in the world was also fully human. Even and especially then, he didn't lament in his own heart for himself, but he lamented over Jerusalem. What they weren't seeing, what they weren't knowing, experience. He laments over Jerusalem's unwillingness to be gathered under God's protective wings to receive exactly what he knows they need. Likening his love to a mother hen longing to shield her chicks. If worries, financial or health-related, keep you and I up at night, Jesus' calm perseverance amid lethal threats offers a reminder that there is always a practical path to hope and healing and trust, inviting us beneath what is happening in the chaos of the world to experience his secure, mothering care, finding peace in the chaos. That it's not only available sometimes, but it is available all times and every time if only we will allow ourselves to be led. In the story, we see a God who refuses to abandon us. It's a steadfast, sheltering, rooted love that we see in God here, and it deeply roots in the ground, holding it firm, a vast canopy, inviting innumerable creatures in the world to rest from their labor. Amy Jill Levine highlights the striking maternal metaphor of God's nurturing desire, that it stands in contrast to the natural human tendency of pulling away and lamenting what we don't have. We often forget the shelter, or we take it for granted as it is presented to us. Even when we roam away, again, God's canopy remains ready to welcome us back into its safe expanse, exemplifying a trust beyond whatever circumstances plague us. So Jesus continues in his redemptive journey, and so do we, revealing that God's love, like a hen's wings, steadfastly protects and gathers us all, even in life's turbulent storms, some that seem like they are just too great to overcome. Thomas More, a philosopher, a theologian in a way, and a psychotherapist, he said, "To trust in the deep rhythms of care is to be held in an embrace that we do not control, yet an embrace that never fully lets us go." So today, as you continue through your daily life, whatever ties that bind, whatever plagues your mind, you are invited into a practice of renewal that's in our devotional guides, and one that I'll just say to you as a way of invitation. An invitation to loosen our frantic control and leaning into God's mothering embrace that steadies us, transforming maybe in however large or small a way how we tackle relationships around us, even our budgets that keep us up at night, or personal turmoil that we might be silently holding. Each evening, I invite you to list and attempt to release even one pressing worry, to hold it in prayer, and then outline one positive, and again, even small or very simple step for tomorrow, trusting that God's care really does surround you, even if the sight of it or the feeling of it is not quite apparent. Though storms may swirl, the refuge offered by Christ remains an unfailing invitation to trust our caring parent who gathers us under evergreen limbs and shelters us until those storms do pass. May we lay aside fear, finding peace under the canopy of God's wide branches. And there, friends, we will always find home. In the name of God, who was and is to come. Amen. Friends, you are invited to continue to follow Jesus through